All right. Um, on chapter 4 of volume 3 in Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East, chapter 4. We resumed our work next morning with renewed zest, having banished all fear from our thoughts. On the morning of the second day, we were working on some of the figures carved in the rock of the canyon wall. Suddenly, our attention was drawn to the village sentry, whose position was across the canyon at a greater elevation, affording a much wider outlook. Through our field glasses, we saw him signal the village. Soon, the villagers were hurrying to and fro, evidently seeking protection in the great gorges deeper in the mountain fastness. All the inhabitants were deeply agitated. As we listened, we could hear the low, thundering roar of the advancing horde. One of our party climbed to a higher position, which gave a broader view of the situation. He called back, stating that he could see the cloud of dust raised by the horsemen as they advanced toward the entrance of the canyon. We secreted our equipment in a nearby crevasse, joined our associate, and found shelter in the surrounding crags and rocks where we could observe the movements of the band. As they entered the canyon, the band halted. 50 horsemen rode forward as an advance guard. Then the whole band moved up the canyon, spurring and lashing their horses into a wild gallop. The clatter and roar of the hooves over the rocky floor, coupled with shouts of defiance, caused an indescribable din. Had it not been so tragic at the time, it would have been awe-inspiring to witness this great body of horsemen sweeping forward. Our position was very advantageous, as the canyon walls were nearly precipitous, so that we could look directly down upon the bandit horde as they swept on with the seemingly irresistible force of a great tidal wave. The advance band of intruders had swept past our position, and those in the lead of the main band were fast approaching. We had turned our field glasses on the little village for the moment and observed that it was panic stricken. One member of our party working on the ledge stopped work and was watching the advancing band. We saw him turn and look through the door leading to the entrance of the center room of the temple. Our field glasses were all centered upon the figure of Jesus as he advanced through the door and stepped upon the ledge, walking directly to the brink and standing for a moment with body magnificently poised. This ledge was about 800 feet above where we were concealed and nearly 3 miles distant. Instantly, we realized that he was speaking, and in another moment, the words came to us clear and distinct. Our associate on the ledge sat down and began taking notes in shorthand, which I did also. Later comparison showed that he heard his words distinctly above the din of the advancing hordes. We were told that he did not raise his voice above his natural well-modulated tones. As Jesus began speaking, a perfect calm came over the entire village and its inhabitants. These are his words, translated into English by Jesus himself. My most favorite prayer will always be that I shall never forget them, though I live to be 10,000 years. The light. As I stand alone in your great silence, God, my Father, in the midst of me there blazes a pure light, and it fills every atom of my whole being with its great radiance. Life, love, strength, purity, beauty, perfection stand forth in all dominion within me. As I gaze into the very heart of this light, I see another light, liquid, soft, golden white, and radiantly luminous, absorbing, mothering, and giving forth the caressing fire of the greater light. Now I know that I am God, and one with God's whole universe. I whisper to God, my Father, and I am undisturbed. Still in the silence. Yet, in this complete silence, there exists God's greatest activity. Again, I am undisturbed, and complete silence is all about me. Now, the radiance of this light spreads to God's vast universe, and everywhere I know there is God's conscious life. Again, I say fearlessly, I am God. I am silent and unafraid. I lift the Christ high within me and sing God's praise. In the tones of my music, inspiration hums. Louder and louder within me, the Great Mother sings of new life. Louder and clearer with each new day, inspiration is lifting my conscious thought until it is attuned to God's rhythm. Again, I lift the Christ high and give close ear that I may hear the glad music. My keynote is harmony, and the theme of my song is God, and God seals my song as truth. Behold, I am born anew, a Christ is here. I am free with great light, and your spirit, God my Father, your seal is placed upon my forehead. I accept. I hold your light high, God my Father. Again, I accept. As Jesus ceased speaking, a dazzling ray of pure white light shot out from the center of the solar part of his body. This beam of light extended down the canyon some distance to where the gorge made an abrupt left turn just ahead of the place where the advanced group of horsemen were riding. At the point where this light beam terminated, a great barrier-like stone wall seemed to rise instantly, and great darts that appeared like flaming arrows shot out from this barrier. The advancing horses stopped so suddenly in their mad forward dash that they unseated a number of their riders. Many of them paused for a moment with their heads and 4 feet in the air, then turned and bolted down the canyon completely out of control. When they reached the advanced ranks of the main band, those riders that had not been unseated attempted to control their horses, but to no avail. These, as well as the riderless horses, plunged on and into the front ranks of the moving band. Here, the movements of the front ranks were checked, while their ranks in the rear, not realizing their danger, came on and surged over those in advance until the canyon below us was a seething mass of men and horses. For an instant all was a dead calm, save for the wild screams of frightened men and mad horses, where the wild stampede of the advanced riders had clashed with the forward columns of the main band. There, a terrific scene was taking place. The riderless horses, entirely free from restraining hands, had plunged headlong into and over advanced ranks, unseating many more men, and they, with their ungoverned mounts, added to the confusion. The horse began rearing, plunging and screaming, as only dumb animals can, in a moment of uncontrolled and violent fright. This, this mad melee was communicated through the massed horde in the canyon below us. Suddenly, we saw men draw their short swords and slash wildly in every direction. Others drew their firearms and began shooting at men and horses in an attempt to clear the way for an escape. It soon developed into a battle of the survival of the fit. It ended in a mad dash for liberty by those who were fortunate enough to escape the shambles, leaving the gorge cluttered with great heaps of dead and wounded men and horses. We hurried down to give what aid we could to the wounded. All of the inhabitants and our friends joined us. Messengers were sent out far and wide for assistance. We worked feverishly through the night and, until after sunup the next morning. As rapidly as we were able to extricate the wounded ones from the terrible debris, Jesus and our friends would take them in hand. When the last man was cared for, we returned to the lodge for breakfast. Much to our surprise, as we entered, we found the Black Bandit talking to Emile. It was the first time that any of us were conscious that Emile had been present. He saw our look of wonderment and said, "That will keep until later." After the meal was finished, we walked outside with the chief, and he told us that Emile had come upon the man seriously wounded and unable to move, as he was held down by his fallen horse. They had freed him and carried him to the temporary shelter where he was made as comfortable as possible. Then they had called our hostess and turned him over to her care. After his wounds were dressed, he asked if she would ask her God to show him what to do to be like her. He also asked her to teach him how to pray. She asked him if he wished to be whole and well, and he replied, "Yes, wholly like you." She answered, "Now that you have asked for wholeness, your prayer is answered. You are completely whole now." The man lapsed into a deep slumber. At midnight, when our chief made his rounds, he found that the wounds had completely closed and there was not a scar left. The man arose, dressed, and volunteered to assist in the rescue work. We also saw a great number that we thought were just slipping into the great shadow, restored completely. Some would cringe in terror at the approach of our friends, so much so that it became necessary to separate them from the others. After the rescue work was finished, the Black One, as we called him, went about among his wounded associates, doing all he could to alleviate their fears. Many seemed like animals caught in a trap, fearing that a terrible death by torture awaited them, as that was the sentence meted out to them through the law of the land of that land, should a bandit be captured. So definitely had this belief become fixed in their minds that they never responded to the kindness bestowed upon them. They feared they were being nurtured back to health, so that torture would be of great duration. All were finally healed of their wounds, although a few lingered for months, evidently thinking they were delaying the day of torture. The Black One later organized all of the wounded who would join him into a protective unit against further raids, and also induced many of the inhabitants to join this unit. From that time on, we were later informed, the bandit groups never again attempted to raid that district. Later, two of our expeditions passed through that territory on their way to the Gobi. This man, with his followers, conducted them safely through his own district and the adjoining district, a distance of over 400 miles, and neither he nor his followers would accept any compensation for that service. We have been told many times that he has become a great power for good throughout the district, giving his entire life freely to the people without remuneration. And that ends chapter 4.